Welcome back. Now, in 2012, while diver Chris Lemons was 330 feet underwater, his support vessel suffered a systems failure and he was left without oxygen for 30 minutes.
Wow. A new movie, Last Breath, has been made about Chris's story, with Woody Harrelson starring as Chris, and he joins us now. Chris, good morning to you. Thank you so much for being here to talk to us about this incredible story. First of all, can we just get an idea? You're a saturation diver. Can you explain to us a little bit more what you were doing 330 feet underwater?
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's a strange way of getting to work, I suppose. But yeah, basically, saturation diver is a way of diving very deep, and it's used pretty much exclusively in the oil and gas industry. You know, most people will know when you go scuba diving, for example, you have to sort of take decompression stops on the way back to the surface to safely allow the gases to get out of your system or out of your tissues. But when you're diving down to 330 feet, as you described, those sort of decompression stops, when we spend 6 hours a day on the seabed, those decompression stops take about 4 days. So obviously that's not possible day to day. So instead we live in chambers, which are basically tin cans, long tin cans on a ship, and commute every day down to the seabed in a diving bell. And basically what happens is you're under pressure the whole time. So you only sort of decompress once. So yeah, a complicated way of doing something quite simple, I suppose, but a funny way to live and work.
A funny way to live and work. How far down are those tin cans, those decompression chambers that you kind of live on for 4 days?
Well, you live in them for a month, yeah, for 28 days at a time, and they're actually on the ship itself. So you just sort of a diving bell locks onto them every day and taxis you, I guess, down to whatever depth you're going to be working at. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The working side's a bit, it's a strange place to work for 6 hours a day, but the living side is probably the most difficult bit of the job, having to live, quite frankly, in close confines with people you might not necessarily want to.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, let's move on to your story. Of course, what happened to you back in 2012, this accident while you were at the seabed. Tell us more about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was as you say, 2012. We were working, or my colleague Dave Uasa and I were working inside a big structure, really, something the size of a house, basically, about 300 feet down, as you say, pretty much in the middle of the North Sea. And the boat above us, which we are attached to by an umbilical, which is just what it sounds like, a giver of life. It gives us this infinite supply of breathing gas and hot water to keep us alive in those freezing conditions. We're attached to the diving bell by that umbilical, and the diving bell in turn is attached to the boat. And the boat basically had a computer failure and lost position and started to drift away in pretty sort of 35 knot winds and about 6 meters of sea. And as the vessel starts to drift like a sailboat, really, we are, because we're attached to it, are dragged along with it. And my umbilical caught on a metal outcrop, basically, of the structure we'd been working inside, and I became an anchor to an 8,000-ton vessel. And obviously there's only ever going to be one winner in that situation. And eventually my sort of gas supply was cut off, and then the umbilical itself snapped. What I did have was I had an emergency supply on my back, a couple of scuba tanks, which probably gave me, we'll never really know, but about 7 or 8 minutes of breathing gas. But I was basically left abandoned on the bottom as the ship sort of blew out of control above me, and eventually, after 8 minutes lying on the bottom, I ran out of that gas and fell unconscious and lay there for another nearly 35 minutes, I think, before they were able to come back and fetch me. And very much assumed I was dead, obviously, with good reason. But yeah, incredibly, my colleague Dave put in an absolutely incredible and heroic effort alongside Duncan Alcock, who was actually in the diving bell to get me back into a breathable environment. And Duncan literally gave me a couple of rescue breaths, and I came round pretty much instantly, nearly 40 minutes later. So yeah, it was a pretty, I don't really like the word miracle particularly, but it certainly feels miraculous, yeah, even today.
Certainly.
We're just listening to this, normal people trying to hold their breath underwater. Scientists are been studying this. They're trying to find out how you stayed alive. Do we know why you stayed alive when your gas and breathing air had run out after 8 minutes?
We don't really have a definitive answer, I wouldn't say. We've got theories. I always assumed it was the cold to a great extent. I would have been hypothermically cold very, very quickly. And, you hear stories of kids surviving under ice for many, many minutes and hours even in places like Scandinavia. But I understand that probably was a help, probably slowed everything down. My heart rate, my breathing, everything would have been almost non-existent. But I think in truth, it's probably actually the gas that we breathe. We breathe this strange mixture of helium and oxygen at that depth. You can't breathe air. It's basically poisonous at that depth, really. But it has elevated levels of oxygen in it. And I think they basically saturated my tissues and just kept the building blocks of life alive just long enough. But I've spoken at the British Medical Society, and even they say that they can't understand it at all. And what's definitely true is that the margins would have been very, very small, not just between death, but between not getting that and not getting brain damage, or at least no one's been brave enough to tell me otherwise. Anyway,
Chris, you literally stared death in the face. What was that like as a feeling?
Yeah, I feel like a little bit of a charlatan because I'm sat here in front of you, obviously relatively healthy and well. But it was unusual, obviously, to get this sort of. I had maybe 5 or 6 minutes to lie there and contemplate what I thought was my impending death, I guess. And I can remember the fear draining out of me strangely when I realised I was unable to help myself and I was completely at the mercy of others coming to get me. The fear sort of drained out of me, and it was really overtaken by grief, I think. I remember thinking of people at home, the incredible damage I was going to do to everybody, the hopes and dreams. I was in my early 30s.
Oh, no, I think we just lost you briefly there. Can you hear us again?
Come back. Hello, Chris.
Ethereal place, I suppose. So, yeah, very, very sad, really, and grief-stricken, I suppose, yeah.
We lost you just for a minute there, but you were saying
sorry.
This ethereal place that you're in, but you felt this sadness for the people that you left behind. How did your mother find out about this, Chris?
Yeah, I was sort of slightly naive in the beginning and thought I wouldn't need to tell anybody about this. No one's going to find out. When I heard it was going in the newspapers, I sort of made efforts to try and get in touch with everybody I knew to warn them, but I didn't get to my mother in time. So she was a teacher at the time and read this in a double-page spread in a national newspaper somewhere. So yeah, she's never quite forgiven me for that. Yeah,
I can imagine she hasn't.
You're alive.
Listen, you were part of an amazing documentary on this in 2019. It's an amazing watch. You're also now part of a new movie with Woody Harrelson starring in it, The Last Breath. Did you have any involvement in it? Have you seen it yet? Are you excited for it coming out?
Yes, it's surreal, isn't it? You mess up once at work and suddenly there's 2 films. So, it's been incredible. The documentary is fantastic. That was made by Richard DaCosta and Alex Parkinson, and Alex has gone on to direct this one. So we had some involvement. We were across in Malta where they were filming, spent some time with the actors to help them prepare. I was down there for about a week. Just talking to them really and talking through diving. We saw it. They put up a bit of a private screening for me down here in France where I live. And then we were across 10 days ago for the premiere in New York and sort of partied the night away with Woody and Finn. And Finn, it's actually Finn Cole that plays me. Woody Harrelson plays Duncan up in the Bell, but Finn's from Peaky Blinders, a really lovely guy as well. So
much better looking.
Flapping. He is, exactly. Yeah. Lovely curly hair, young, good skin. Perfect match for me, as you can tell. Yeah, it's been a great experience. Yeah.
And who Simu Liu is playing as well must be delighted, being like a Marvel superhero is playing me. This is incredible. I just remember how much The Abyss made my heart go absolutely mad. So I think this is going to be edge of the seat stuff. The movie is coming out on Friday, based on your true story. It's called The Last Breath. You can see that documentary as well. The fact that Chris, you went back to work in this industry for years after this happened to you is incredible.
Amazing.
It's been so lovely talking to you. Thanks for taking the time, Chris Lemons.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.